Hello, this is Mr. Nelson. This is the first chapter in sociology, and so this will be where our notes start. What I need you to do is to either write or type in your computer or Chromebook the information that I have provided here, and we're going to start off with our first unit being including Chapter 1 and 3, and we'll start with Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is an invitation to sociology, and what I'm going to go over today is just some very, very basic principles of what this course is about. So as you type this down, I'll kind of talk a little bit about what sociology is and how a sociologist thinks, because it's very different than the way other people think. Sociology really goes for, looks at, the relationship between human social behavior from a group rather than an individual perspective. It concentrates on patterns of social relationships primarily in modern societies. And so what I'm going to go over is some of the basic components of sociology, one of the very newest and most recent social sciences. Sociology is the study of social structure, basically human social behavior. Social structure is the pattern interaction of people in social relationships, basically how we interact with people and how groups affect us, how people in general affect us and how we interact with those people. It's a very interesting type of social science that it's a little complicated and sometimes at times difficult to understand, but sociology really concentrates on the pattern of social relationships. I'll give you a couple more seconds as you type this down. While you're typing this down, studies show juvenile delinquency increases as church attendance decreases. If you saw this headline in your local paper, you might be tempted to think, well, duh, of course. After all, applying a little common sense to this topic would probably lead you to draw exactly the same conclusion. If you assumed, however, that lower church attendance causes delinquency, you would actually be making kind of a common mistake. Research shows that delinquency increases as church attendance decreases because of a third factor, age. Older people go to church less often, and they are more likely than younger teens to be delinquent. What may seem to be a relationship between church attendance and delinquency is actually caused by a third factor, and that's age. That affects both of the other two factors. Questioning and researching assumptions is an important part of sociology. And so we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that, but as we continue in through our notes on the next slide, talk about perspective. All of us have a different perspective. It's a particular point of view. Babies are usually brighter and better looking to their parents than they are to others. Newlyweds nearly always find their spouses much more attractive than do their friends. We all see that what is happening around us through our own perspectives, our own point of view. My example I have up here is getting to Lincoln. There are probably 5 or 6 different examples people in this classroom could tell me on how to get to Lincoln. They have a variety of ways that people have on how to get to Lincoln. Have you ever had a student or a friend tell you that a certain teacher was a certain way, and when you had that teacher in class, it was completely different? Your friend had a different perspective than you. We all have a particular point of view, and we view things differently. To understand sociology, you need to look at the sociological perspective, and that's a view that looks at behavior of groups, not individuals. For those of you who like to people watch, sometimes this is an example where you look at the behaviors of people within their groups. I know my grandma has a fun time at the mall people watching, but sociological perspective, a view that looks at the behavior of groups. How do groups affect us? What groups at Norfolk High School affect us? How do groups interact with each other, and how do they kick out members? How do they accept members? There's a variety of things when we look at groups, and that's the sociological perspective. Another key point in sociology is group conformity. This occurs because we are taught to value what the group wishes. A common thing at teenage years and in college is smoking and drinking. Many people choose to smoke and drink not because they like the effects of what it gives them, but it's to gain group acceptance. They must feel that they must be a smoker or must be a drinker in order to fit in with the group. We normally do not realize how much of our attitudes and beliefs are determined by our perspectives. Sometimes, though, when our outlook is challenged, we may be jarred into realizing how much we take it for granted. So group conformity, we'll talk a lot about group conformity later on in this course. Another part of sociology is the sociological imagination, and this is the ability of individuals to see the relationship between events in their personal lives and events in their society. So the sociological imagination is the ability of individuals to see the relationship between events in their personal lives and events in their society, like I said. People do not make decisions big or small in isolation. Historically, for example, our society has had a strong bias against one-child or childless marriages. Couples without children have been considered selfish, and an only child has often been labeled as spoiled. These values date back from a long time ago when large families were needed for survival. Most people lived on family farms back then, and children were needed to help with the work. Families in Norfolk would have large families. Another sad statistic to this is many children died at birth or in infancy. People responded to society's needs by having large families. Now, as the need for large families is disappearing, we are beginning to read about benefits of one-child families. The sociological imagination helps us understand the effects of events such as the social pressures just discussed on our daily lives. The next component is what a social science class is. They're basically our social studies classes. In the study of human social behavior, the main components, the main 6 social science courses is our anthropology, which that one deals with, investigates culture and the beliefs and traits of groups. It is the closely related to sociology. Anthropology, however, concentrates on the study of pre-literate societies, societies that did not use writing, and more of our primitive groups. The next group that's closest related to sociology would be psychology. Psychology investigates human mental and emotional processes, while sociologists concentrates on groups. The next group after that, we have the history, your typical history that examines the past events of human societies. We have our American history, obviously, at the freshman and sophomore level here. Psychology is offered at the junior and senior level. And then political science, which would be your government class that you would have probably taken your junior year. So those are the 6 social sciences. Make sure you remember that anthropology is the closest in relation to sociology. But as you go through this course, if you've taken psychology, you will notice that there are some major similarities with psychology and sociology. The big difference is sociology focuses on groups, psychology focuses on individuals. To the origins of sociology. Sociology kind of started being a group study when we saw the events of the French Revolution with group behavior and group mentality of when people would mob mentality during the French Revolution. But it really grows out of the Industrial Revolution when we started to see a society moving away from farming. So really you could see some of this in the late 1700s, in the early 1800s. It was recognized as an academic discipline in the 19th century. And that's when it really started to take off. But sociology was developed to understand the social conditions of the Industrial Revolution. So the social and economic effects of the Industrial Revolution and the French Revolution were touching all aspects of life. People were moving from farms to factory life, and they were losing a sense of community. Some intellectuals were fascinated and troubled by the sudden changes we were seeing in our society. And these ideas led to the rise of the science of sociology. Examining the central idea of the major pioneers of sociology will help us better understand what sociology is. And the first guy that we're going to go over is Auguste Comte. He was a Frenchman. He is recognized as the father of sociology. So if there's a test question on who's the father of sociology, you want to go to this guy, Auguste Comte. As a child, he was often ill, but he proved early to be an excellent student. He had difficulty balancing his genuine interest in school and his rebellious and stubborn nature. As an adult, Comte's main concern was the improvement of society. If societies were to advance, Comte believed social behavior had to be studied scientifically. And so we're going to go over some of Comte's terms and some of the things that he came up with sociology in the next slide. There's a good old picture of Auguste Comte. And so one of the things that Auguste Comte termed is something called positivism. And that's the belief that knowledge should be derived from scientific observation. He meant that sociology should be a science based on knowledge on which we can be positive or sure. See, he wanted to put a lot of the scientific observation in the study of social behavior. Comte also distinguished between two other major terms, and that would be social statics, and that's the study of social stability and order, basically what our society is right now, and social dynamics, the study of social change. The distinction between social stability and social change remains at the center of modern sociology. So social statics, when the study of when society is stable, and social dynamics, when things are changing. So if we look at things, social statics, Norfolk, and if you looked at the situation in Baltimore last year with the riots, that would be more of the study of social dynamics, the study of social change. The civil rights movement, social dynamics, pretty much the 1980s, the decade of the 80s in the United States, social statics, stability and order. Another guy that is considered a sociologist, even though he didn't know that he was a sociologist, is a guy named Karl Marx. He believed the structure of society influenced how the economy was organized. Karl Marx, most popular for writing the Communist Manifesto and creating the idea of communism. Karl Marx was a German, and he basically did not consider himself a sociologist because there was no thing called sociology back then, but Marx felt a great concern for poverty and inequality. He's going to be a classic part of conflict theory. The issue that Karl Marx has is, and you've got to remember this was during the Industrial Revolution, was the bourgeoisie. That was the class owning the means for producing wealth, the people that had the means for producing wealth. The capitalist, a person who owns or controls the means for producing wealth. Those groups were the groups that we're going to focus on here, but it was about who has money and who does not. And a lot of sociology focusing on groups, the people that have money, the people that do not, and why people don't have money. Karl Marx is going to be a great example of that. And so we'll cover a little bit of Karl Marx here, and we'll get to the next slide. I'll wait a little bit because I probably went through that a little bit faster than expected, so I'll give another 15 seconds for everybody to type this in. All right. There's a picture of Karl Marx, kind of looks like Santa Claus. The proletariat was the working class, the everyday people, those who would labor or work for the rich, the bourgeoisie, basically the rich. And what a lot of Karl Marx focused on was class conflict, the ongoing struggle between the rich and the poor. And you could take this in any level, the ongoing struggle between the boss and his workers, the ongoing struggle between perhaps the principal and the teachers. Every level there's class conflict, the ongoing struggle between the owners and the working classes. And so that's where a lot of his focus was on. And I'll keep that up a little bit longer. I realize I went through that slide a little fast. All right. Emil Durkheim, and that's not Emily, it's Emil, it's a guy. He was the first to use statistical methods in the study of human groups. He was also the first to teach a university sociology course. In college, this guy was so intently studious that they called him the metaphysician. According to Durkheim, society exists because of a broad consensus or agreement among people in our society. And so Emil Durkheim really took statistics to try to figure out why things worked the way they did. And he used a lot of math to back his findings. And so Later sociologists developed methods to replace a lot of the different things that he did, but he was really big with classifying data and forming different theories on